Hi guys, it's Roxanne. I'm going to do a quick little video on the most famous child kidnappings that we can't forget. I found this article on Family Minded, and it is done by Laura Lambert and has been updated on March 6, 2020. So it says, it's a certain kind of horror story, one that's all too easy to translate to your own life. If you're a parent, the child at the bus stop, the one who was riding her bike, the teen or the infant asleep in bed. While the equation is more or less the same, an innocent child met with evil or greed, the results vary. Some return scared but alive, many don't. And still others don't make headlines at all. Perhaps the only sober lining is that the kind of kidnapping or child abduction we fear most, by a stranger, is the exception. They count for less than 1% of all missing children. Still, these are the stories we just can't shake. Not only do they tell the cruelties of child kidnappings, but also the heroic acts that led to the systems like the Amber Alert, now in place to help missing persons. Our first one is the Jamie Kloss. Date of disappearance is October 15th, 2018, and the date found was January 10th, 2019. It was the situation every parent fears, and one that experts say is exceedingly rare: a targeted attack on a child by a total stranger, wrote Matt Ferber and Mitch Smith in the New York Times. The disappearance of 13-year-old Jamie Kloss and the murder of her parents in their rural Barron, Wisconsin home baffled law enforcement when it happened on October 15, 2018. Then, after 88 days, Kloss escaped captivity and got help from a woman who happened to be walking her dog nearby. Kloss had been held by 21-year-old Jake Patterson, a local loner who painstakingly planned her abduction after seeing her at a middle school bus stop. Patterson has since pled guilty to homicide and kidnapping. Amanda Berry. Date of disappearance, April 21st, 2003. Date found, May 6th, 2013. On May 6th, 2013, 3 separate missing person cases were solved at once when Charles Ramsey heard a woman screaming for help, broke down the door of the shabby house next door in Cleveland's Tremont neighborhood, and let the woman, Amanda Berry, call 911. Berry was one of the 3 abducted women being held captive by Ariel Castro in his basement. She disappeared the day before her 17th birthday and was featured on America's Most Wanted during her captivity. Berry gave birth to a daughter, Jocelyn. Castro was confirmed as the father. After pleading guilty to 937 different charges, Castro hung himself in prison. The home on Seymour Avenue, known as the House of Horrors, has since been replaced with a garden. Michelle Knight. Date of disappearance, August 23rd, 2002. Date found, May 6, 2013. Michelle Knight was another one of the women held by Castro. She disappeared when she was 21 years old, on the very day she was scheduled for a court appearance to gain child custody of her son, Joey. When she was found, authorities admitted that they had spent less time in search of Knight since she was technically an adult, and they believed she had run away due to frustrations from the custody battle. Gina Desous. Date of disappearance was April 2nd, 2004. Date found, May 6, 2013. The third woman in the Castro kidnapping case was Gina Desous, who went missing at the age of 14. She was the only one who had a connection to Castro. She was friends with Castro's daughter, Arlene, who she was reported as being the last person to see Desous before her disappearance. J.C. Lee Duggard. Date of disappearance, June 10th, 1991. Date found, August 26, 2009. In 1991, 11-year-old J.C. Lee Duggard was kidnapped from a school bus stop on a South Lake Tahoe street in California. Right in front of her stepfather, she was held for 18 years in a series of tents and sheds in the backyard of a ramshackle Antioch, California house, during which she gave birth to 2 daughters, having been repeatedly raped by her captor, Philip Gardero, a registered sex offender. Duggard was 29 years old when Gardaro's parole officer unearthed the truth about her identity, and Gardo and his wife admitted their crimes. Duggard had been held captive less than 200 miles from her childhood home. Elizabeth Smart. Date of disappearance, June 5th, 2002. Date found, March 12th, 2003. Elizabeth Smart was just 14 years old when in 2002 she was taken by knife point from her own bedroom in a neighborhood of Salt Lake City, her younger sister asleep next to her. The perpetrator, Mormon religious fanatic Brian David Mitchell. He and his wife Wanda Barzee had prepared an encampment in the woods nearby, where Smart was tied to a tree, abused, repeatedly raped over the course of 9 months. In March 2003, Smart was with Mitchell in a Walmart in Sandy, Utah, when someone recognized her from the episode of America's Most Wanted and called the police. Amber Hagerman. Date of disappearance, January 13th, 1996. Date found, January 18th, 1996. In January 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was riding her bike in the parking lot of a grocery store in Arlington, Texas, when an unknown kidnapper snatched her and drove away with her in his pickup truck. Her body was found floating in a creek 5 days later. Law enforcement teamed up with the media to rapidly disseminate information about the abduction, a system that would become the AMBER, America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response Alert, which is still in use today. Polly Kloss. Date of disappearance, October 1st, 1993. Date found, December 4th, 1993. On October 1st, 1993, Polly Kloss was abducted from a summer party in her own home in Petaluma, California. She was 12 years old. The intruder, Richard Allen Davis, had a knife. He tied up the 2 other girls, took Polly, then strangled her and left her dead body atop a pile of trash nearby Cloverdale, California. Davis confessed to the crime in December of that year and led investigators to her body. Adam Walsh. Date of disappearance, July 27th, 1981. Date found, August 12th, 1981. Fans of America's Most Wanted, which ran for 25 seasons on TV, know the story of 6-year-old Adam Walsh. He was abducted while shopping with his mother at a mall in July 1981. She had left him alone for 10 minutes in the toy department, and then he was gone. His severed head was discovered weeks later in Vero Beach, Florida. Adam's father, John, became a passionate voice in the missing children's movement, pushing for the Missing Children's Act of 1982 and other legislation, and also hosting America's Most Wanted. In 2008, police declared that Otis Tolley, a convicted serial killer, had killed Adam. Tolley died in prison in 1996. Ethan, I think that's how you would say that. Eaton maybe? Pat's disappearance, May 25th, 1979. Date found, hasn't been found. It took nearly 40 years to solve the case of Eaton Patz, the 6-year-old boy who walked to a bus stop 2 blocks away from his home in New York City for the first time by himself May 1979 and was never seen again. Patz would become one of the first missing children to appear on the side of a milk carton, which heralded a new era of vigilance and fear with respect to missing children. Pedro Hernandez, the man convicted of Pat's murder in 2017, was 19 years old when Pat's disappeared and had no criminal record. Patty Hearst, date of disappearance February 4th, 1974, date found April 3rd, 1974. A certain type of kidnapping is less about murder and more about the money or notoriety. Patty Hearst, the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, one of the richest men in the U.S., was kidnapped from her Berkeley, California home in Florida in 1974 by the Symbionese Liberation Army, a renegade Marxist group that wanted to topple capitalism in the country. The SLA didn't ask for a traditional ransom, but for the Hearst family to give $70 worth of food to every needy California, costing about $400 million, which they more or less did. Famously, Hearst, then 19-year-old, joined the SLA, a classic case of Stockholm Syndrome. She made the announcement on the videotape on April 3rd, 1974, and was soon after seen robbing a bank in San Francisco under her pseudonym name. Tiana Hearst was eventually freed when she was arrested for a slew of illegal activities about 19 months after she had been taken. Paul Getty III. Date of disappearance was July 10th, 1973. Date found December 15th, 1973. In 1973, Jean Paul Getty's grandson, John Paul Getty III, was abducted in Rome when the boy was 16. Famously, the elder Getty refused to pay the $17 million ransom, thought he could easily afford it because he believed it would mean his other 13 grandchildren could become targets. And that's even after the kidnappers cut off one of John Paul's ears and mailed it to him. Ooh. The grandfather finally negotiated a deal to get him back for $2.9 million, of which he paid $2.2 million and lent the remainder to his son, who was to repay him with 4% interest. Okay, that was strange. Frank Sinatra Jr., date of disappearance December 8th, 1963, date found December 11th, 1963. Frank Sinatra Jr. was not close with his father, Frank Sinatra Sr., but the elder Sinatra nonetheless paid the $240,000 ransom demanded by Barry Kenyon and Joe Amsler, who abducted the then 19-year-old Sinatra from a hotel in Lake Tahoe, California. However, the kidnappers botched the plan and released the younger Sinatra before receiving the funds. Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. Date of disappearance was March 1st, 1932. Date found May 12th, 1932. In March 1932, Charles Lindbergh, the famous pilot, was also pressured for ransom for the return of his 20-month-old son, Charles Jr. The baby has been abducted from his crib in the family's second-floor nursery in East Amwell, New Jersey. The ever-increasing demands for ransom were paid. However, the baby was found in a shallow grave that May, less than 5 miles away from the Lindbergh's home. The ones whose names you don't know. It's worth noting that while stories such as these dominate headlines and news feeds, plenty of kidnappings, missing and abducted children, particularly girls and boys of color aren't reported in the press. In fact, the FBI estimates more than 1/3 of missing children are black. Because of the stark imbalance in attention, Dietrich Wilson, a former police officer, and her sister-in-law, Natalie Wilson, started the Black and Missing Foundation in 2008. Through its efforts, the foundation has helped recover more than 300 missing persons in the past 11 years. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you.